I'm here with Nikkie Whaley. She's the Vice President of Washington Elementary School District, Phoenix, Arizona. She's also the Equity Services Manager for Arizona School Board Association. Hi, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Let's talk about education and equity.
Okay, that's something I love to talk about. So some of the biggest issues that I think are facing many of our school districts across the country are opportunity gaps that are resulting in disparities in outcomes. And I phrase it that way because often we talk about the achievement gap. And I know right now with COVID and everything, people are really concerned about academic slide and achievement gaps and all of that. But we really, when we're doing equity work, we rephrase that to say opportunity gaps, because we truly believe that achievement gaps makes it sound as if our children are deficient. And we don't believe that our children are deficient. We believe that every student has potential and that every student is capable of excellence, and that it's our jobs as the adults in the system to make sure that that happens. And so when our children are not performing, we should be asking ourselves, what are we doing as a system to address their needs in order for them to be successful?
Right. Okay, good. It's interesting because I've never heard of people at the school district illuminating the data, aspect of equity. And so what are those key identifiers in your data that will help you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of research that tells us what some of the predictors of success are. They tend to be attendance. So, we look for chronically absent students, which is students that are missing more than 10% of school, which if you're in a 180-day school year, that's 18 days. That's like a little more than a day a month. And so many of our students are chronically absent. You can't learn if you're not there.
Right,
so that's one of the ones that we look at. We also look at performance in math and English. I believe all subjects are crucially important, especially nowadays. I think civics and social studies are very important. But we do look at math and English data as benchmarks for being able to complete and succeed. And then it's also behavior. We look at our behavior and discipline data. We know statistically that students that are suspended are less likely to graduate than those are not. They're also more likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system, et cetera. So as a board member, I have always asked for the data. I love data. I call myself a data diva or data dork, depending on, what, some people aren't into it. They don't like the spreadsheets, but I really like to dig in and say, what's going on? And so the data as a school board member that I'm asking for is first and foremost disaggregated. Don't just give me averages. I want to see it by campus. I want to see it by the demographics, because averages hide disparities.
Right.
Secondarily, I want to see attendance data. But I want to see it in growth. I don't want to just see completions on standardized tests. I want to see our benchmark. What are the interventions that we used, and what is the pre and post of how those students were doing with those interventions? I want to see attendance data, because again, if they're not there, what's going on? And there's a lot of things, that can happen. Everything from just don't have the transportation, trauma, hunger, watching siblings. There's lots of different things that can happen. And then I want to look at that discipline data. Do we have disparities? Are we sending some of our kids, to detention while other kids with the same offenses get, passes? If we have, say, for example, 8% Black students, but they represent 24% of our suspensions, that's a disparity, because if all children are equally good or equally naughty, then they should not be 3 times as likely to be suspended. And if you're looking at an 8% population of Black students, why do they represent 3 times that much in suspensions? There's something that's going on there. And so that's the kind of data that I want to see. And again, flashlight, not a hammer. I don't want to go and shame and blame and say, okay, all of you are, biased, or all of you are, not trying hard enough with these kids. But it does illuminate that, because none of us think that we're doing anything wrong, right? We all have the best intentions. But the proof is in the pudding, right? And if the numbers are showing that, we can't deny that. We have to ask ourselves why. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't ask those questions. And as boards sometimes, or as administrators, we don't want to look at the data because it looks bad. But the key to equity is growth. Look at that data, and then what are you going to do about it? And as long as you're doing something about it, I think the community and families are very forgiving. But if you try to hide it away or say that it doesn't exist, that's when you start getting really upset parents and community members.
I want to hear more about the process once you get the data. What actual programs or implementations have you placed to help the students once you see that there's an equity issue involved?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because, you have to go beyond numbers. We're not just talking about numbers. These are children. These are our families that are experiencing things. And so one of the parts that we also look about at equity is tying, your quantitative data, like the numbers, with the qualitative data, which is the context, the experiences. And so when you look at these numbers and you're seeing that there's disparities in it, and you say, for example, see that your young women are not achieving at the same level as maybe your young men or a particular demographic, you go and you talk to you talk to the teachers, you talk to the students. A lot of times we forget to talk to the students. If they're not doing well, they'll probably tell you what's going on. And so if they tell you what's going on, listen to them. And so maybe that is simply the approach in the classroom. Maybe it's, they've got other things going on and we need to circle maybe some social emotional supports. Maybe, there's been times where there's some kind of drama happening on the campus level and we need to kind of get that together before the kids can focus again. So the data is really just enough to tell you where you need to look. It's not the end of the conversation. You have to actually talk to people, right? Education is about people. And so when you do that, you need to see what it is that is really needed. And so that's why a lot of schools are moving to this whole child approach, because we realize that our students are coming to us with all kinds of things that are going on. Everything from food insecurity to, like I said, trauma, things going on in their home or in their background, to simply being not feeling welcomed in their communities, right? If they are somebody that is, for example, we have a lot of refugees in our district. And so they're coming from a different country. They're not used to American school system at all. And so trying to get to a point where they understand what's happening, what resources are available. But I mean, if you're sitting in the classroom and you feel like a fish out of water, everybody's staring at you, you're not focused on the curriculum. So how do we build inclusive environments where everybody feels like they belong and that the adults in the room want them there, right? And not only that we have to have you here, but we want you here. So all of those things can impact academic performance. It's not just they need to study harder or see the material again and again. There's other things going on. And so I think that's important for school boards to know, is to ask for that information as well. Show me where we're getting teacher input. Show me where we're getting parent input. Show me where we're getting student input. That is going to demonstrate that whatever intervention you're saying you want to do is something that you think is really going to work. Right. Also track those interventions. As schools, we sometimes get a lot of people that say, we want to give you this program or this activity or this, and we're going to promise all these outcomes. But then we don't ever really check to see if that really made the difference or not. And so we also have to be responsible with our resources, which is time, people, and money, right? Where are our teachers spending their time? That's the biggest one of our resources. 80% of most school district budgets go to personnel. So if you want to look at your budget and see if you're being effective with your budget, stop playing with that 20% and nickeling and diming. Right. Look at where you're spending that 80%. How are those people spending their time? Because that's going to tell you what's going on there.
Tell me when you finally realized that this is working.
That's a great question. So in my school district, we are 32 schools. I think all but maybe one of them are Title I, each high poverty schools. And we have a very diverse population as well. And like I said, we have refugees, we have students that are learning a second language of English. We have all of these different folks. And one of the things that we did notice is that there's a social worker shortage. Most campuses don't nearly have enough social workers to address the needs on their campus. you're lucky to get one for several schools. We have continued to try to increase the number of social workers. So over the last few years, we now have at least one social worker at all 32 of our schools. And so just doing that and the professional development that those social workers do with the teachers and the staff to help meet the needs of the kids, we're seeing increases in the teachers feeling like they're more able to handle some of the situations in the classroom, but we're also seeing tremendous growth. I think one of the narratives are, we see the data, it's like, people of color are doing so poorly, and it paints this narrative that we're always playing catch up. But there are situations where people of color are striving in our school systems. They're achieving at high rates. And so we're seeing some of that. We're seeing some real high growth in some areas where people wouldn't assume we'd see that growth. And so I think by looking at the data, you measure what matters, right? By simply looking at it, you'd be surprised at how much growth you can see because you're paying attention, right? So I think that combination of really looking at our data, but also really looking at the social and emotional needs of our kids, we've continued to see growth just doing those two things.
What is the school board's role in promoting equity?
The primary reason we have locally elected boards is student achievement. The idea being that people in the community better know what their students need in order to be successful. And so the board needs to understand that they're looking for student achievement. And we know that when we're looking at student achievement, there are inequities, right? We know it. We see the data, and there's inequities. We believe in NSBA. We say there's inequities in every district. Whether your district is all one race or all one socioeconomic status, as we talked about before, there's foster, there's special education, there's all these different things. So there's inequities when you look at that. And so our job as board members is to identify those and then hold our superintendents accountable for addressing those issues. At the Arizona School Boards Association, my colleagues and I have developed a curriculum for specifically for school board members on how they can tackle equity, because there is a lane, right? There's stuff that the school board does, and there's stuff that the administration does, and we want us to maximize our role as board members as policy, budget, and setting the expectations. And so we have a curriculum that's designed to help boards ask the right questions so that they can stay in their lane, but also so that they can promote progress and hold their administration accountable. And so we really think that if we train boards to ask the right questions, and we train them to look at not only data, but also the culture of their system and the way that they embed that in their strategic planning, that they can begin to set the expectations and set the goals that are really going to make a difference in equity. And at the end of the day, we know that strategies that are around equity show student achievement, and again, that's what you're there for. So really, school boards are essential in setting the tone, and if they don't take this up and they don't prioritize it, the rest of the system won't follow. And so they really have to show that this is something that they're not only important by words, but through actions like policy and decision making.
Let's tell our listeners where they can find you or contact you if they want to connect.
Sure. You can reach me through my work. I work for the Arizona School Boards Association. It's issuesineducation.edu, and you can find the staff link there. And my email is nwhaley, WHALEY, at azsba.org.
I'm Alexis Flowers with issuesineducation.net. Thank you.